Welcome to the battlefield of brains, where strategy meets chaos, and every move burns with intensity. Watch grandmasters clash, pieces fall, and legends rise. Maxime opens with nf3, sending his knight forward like an early scout, probing the battlefield for control and initiative. Wesley replies with c5, a sharp flank strike declaring he is ready to challenge the center with fierce counterplay. Maxime pushes c4, stretching his influence across the board and tightening his grip on the central tension. Wesley jumps in with n-sheiks, reinforcing the fight for d4 and preparing a dynamic central confrontation. Maxime thrusts d4, boldly detonating the center and forcing immediate decisions from Wesley's formation. Wesley captures with cxd4, cracking open the center line and injecting sharp energy into the early skirmish. Maxime answers nxt4, reclaiming the outpost with confidence and establishing a strong knight pair in the heart. Wesley develops nf6, bringing another warrior into the fray and preparing to pressure the white center aggressively. Maxime supports with nc3, stacking central control and strengthening his forward presence with steady purpose. Wesley plays e6, constructing a solid barrier while preparing to release his dark-squared bishop with perfect timing. Maxime lifts bf4, eyeing 7 and subtly hinting at tactical ideas that might soon spark into open fire. Wesley strikes back with d5, ripping at the center and announcing he will not yield space without a fight. Maxime calmly sets e3, securing his core and readying harmonious development before the coming melee. Wesley places bb4, pinning the knight, and injecting tactical pressure that disturbs white's comfortable setup. Maxime retreats with b2, reorganizing his pieces while keeping the tension simmering for later options. Wesley castles 00, placing his king behind sturdy walls, and enabling his rook to join the central battle. Maxime castles 00, matching Wesley's stability and preparing for an explosive transition into the middle game. Wesley unleashes bxc3, eliminating a critical defender and fracturing Maxime's pawn structure with precision. Maxime replies bxc accepting structural damage in exchange for dynamic possibilities and open lines. Wesley lifts re8, aiming at the white center like a loaded cannon, ready to fire if lines crack open. Maxime activates bg5, pinning the knight, and stirring strategic discomfort deep inside Wesley's setup. Wesley pushes h6, challenging the bishop and forcing Maxime to declare his intentions without delay. Maxime chooses bxf6, slicing into black's kingside and aiming to weaken the dark squares around Wesley's king. Wesley counters with qesf6, restoring material balance and placing the queen in a dominant central post. Maxime blasts h5, igniting the center again and striving to undermine Wesley's pawn chain decisively. Wesley answers x5, maintaining tension while opening pathways for his minor pieces to surge forward. Maxime plays qb3, targeting b7 and d5 with razor-sharp accuracy and stirring unease in black's defenses. Wesley safeguards with rd8, interposing solid steel between white's threats and his vulnerable pawn structure. Maxime repositions bf3, regrouping calmly while maintaining pressure and searching for the next tactical spark. Wesley leaps Nafiv, driving the queen back and injecting chaotic energy as black's pieces circle aggressively. Maxime stands firm with QB5, turning the tables with counter-pressure and daring the knight to remain exposed. Wesley plays Q/6, intensifying threats on the queen's side and aligning pressure against white's vulnerable structure. Maxime trades queens with QXB6, simplifying the battlefield to reduce immediate dangers and shift toward positional play. Wesley recaptures AXB6, opening the A file like a dangerous corridor. His rooks can soon dominate. Maxime places RF bone, reinforcing the B-file tension and preparing to duel directly with black's heavy pieces. Wesley jumps NC4, planting the knight deep in white territory and weaving multiple tactical hooks into the position. Maxime pushes RB4, pressing down the file and hinting at multi-pronged threats that keep Wesley alert. Wesley lifts Ra3, an aggressive rook advance seeking infiltration and harassing white's scattered structure. Maxime replies NB5, boldly confronting the intruding rook and forcing Wesley to reconsider his forward stance. Wesley shifts Ra5, pivoting defensively, while preparing counterplay along the A-file with sharp precision. Maxime secures with H3, granting his king breathing space and readying his forces for the intensifying narrative ahead. Wesley activates BD7, sliding the bishop into a commanding post that stabilizes his queenside and prepares hidden counterstrikes. Maxime answers BXD5, a daring central chop, meant to disrupt Wesley's coordination and reignite pressure across the board. Wesley lunges Nafiv, his knight spearing forward with menace, eyeing tactical forks and tightening control of key squares. Maxime responds Re4, planting the rook boldly in the center, trying to shield his position while searching for dynamic chances. Wesley shifts Engine 6, the knight circling with lethal intent, threatening discoveries that could shatter Maxime's fragile balance. Maxime captures BXF7, a shocking sacrifice bursting through black's defenses, forcing Wesley's king into open danger. Wesley steadies with KXF7, reclaiming the bishop and emerging with material advantage while keeping momentum in hand. Maxime strikes N10, a fierce checking thrust that rattles Wesley's king and tries to claw back counterplay. Wesley escapes with K-gate, sliding to safety while allowing his centralized pieces to loom over the battlefield. Maxime grabs NXB7, snatching a pawn and creating momentary chaos, desperate to complicate black's growing initiative. Wesley answers B6, calmly redeploying his bishop to clamp down key lines and threaten to trap the wandering knight. Maxime activates RD4, racing his rook to support the knight and spark new tactical threats in the center. Wesley replies RX4, chopping down the rook with cold efficiency and widening his material and positional lead. Maxime strikes back Nixafiv, salvaging material while opening new lines, trying to keep hope alive in the swirling tension. Wesley regroups with RD6, centralizing the rook like a spear poised to pierce deeply into white's weakened camp. Maxime thrusts his knight onto Chix, snapping the pawn with fearless precision to ignite fresh pressure against Wesley's queenside structure. Wesley instantly recaptures with RxCC's, steady hands reclaiming the initiative, while opening tactical lines that shimmer with counterplay threats. Maxime advances A4, a bold flank lever meant to pry open files and stretch Wesley's defensive resources to uncomfortable limits. Wesley answers with RxC3, scooping another pawn and announcing a chilling shift as material and momentum tilt sharply in his favor. Maxime storms forward with A5, pushing the passer like a battering ram, hoping the far-advanced pawn forces Wesley into awkward concessions. Wesley coolly plays Bix A5, erasing the spearhead with surgical calm, leaving Maxime's queenside ambitions suddenly deflated. Maxime lines up Rx-F5, reclaiming the A-pawn while anchoring an active rook deep in enemy territory, stirring tactical unease for Wesley. Wesley counters with Arcaneo, a slicing check that forces Maxime's king backward and sets tempo for dark, looming coordination. Maxime steps to HA2, steadying his monarch while bracing for the accelerating storm swirling around Wesley's hyperactive rooks. Wesley plays RC2, doubling pressure with icy precision, eyeing infiltration squares that could explode into decisive tactical domination. Maxime lifts KG3, marching his king toward safety in central squares despite the battlefield crackling with Wesley's tightening nets. Wesley unleashes N-fight, the knight curling backward like a coiled predator, preparing to leap into crushing outposts with venom. Maxime pushes H4, carving luft and expanding kingside space, hoping to disturb Wesley's pieces before they fully converge. Wesley replies N7, repositioning the knight with elegant menace, threatening entry points that could collapse Maxime's loosened structure. Maxime brings Kf3, centralizing his king bravely as he tries to unify his forces for one final stand against Wesley's growing initiative. Wesley plays K7, a quiet yet venomous regrouping, preparing his kingside infantry to support a strangling counterattack. Maxime activates Rf5, the rook slicing down the fifth rank as he hunts counterplay before Wesley's formation becomes unstoppable. Wesley launches Nc5, his knight leaping into a dominant post where it clamps down on key squares and tightens strategic suffocation. Maxime pushes G4, a fiery advance that challenges Wesley's structure and tries to tear open lines for desperate counter threats. Wesley calmly answers Nd3, planting the knight deep like a dagger aimed directly at Maxime's fragile king corridor. Maxime brings Kg3, his king circling anxiously as he attempts to escape the tightening noose Wesley continues to engineer. Wesley breaks with G6, fortifying his kingside while sharpening tactical edges that threaten to erupt at any moment. Maxime supports with Rf7a, a daring check meant to stall Wesley's advance and squeeze compensation from aggressive initiative. Wesley meets it with K-gate, unflinching as he steps into the attack, trusting the solidity of his piece harmony. Maxime continues with Rf6, clinging to activity and trying to harass Wesley's king before the position collapses. Wesley answers Kg7, drifting calmly as his pieces circle ever closer to delivering structural and tactical devastation. Maxime plays G5, hurling the pawn forward in a desperate attempt to fracture Wesley's kingside fortress. Wesley strikes back with He5, locking the structure and denying Maxime any hope of breakthroughs on the kingside front. Maxime reinforces with f3, trying to stabilize central squares before Wesley's coordinated forces crash through completely. Wesley jumps Neone, a startling knight move that invades key pathways and threatens to slice into Maxime's weakened camp. Maxime responds with e4, bolstering the center and seeking last-ditch activity to resist Wesley's mounting pressure. Wesley activates rc3, lifting the rook toward decisive infiltration as his attack sharpens like a drawn blade. Maxime counters with kf2, dragging his king back to shield vulnerabilities while clinging to structural cohesion. Wesley drops nd3, a forcing thrust that drives Maxime's king into deeper disarray as threats multiply mercilessly. Maxime flees to kg3, scrambling through shrinking safe squares as Wesley's pieces encircle him with clinical brutality. Wesley continues Nefiv, planting the knight on a dominant post that suffocates Maxime's mobility and vision. Maxime tries kjt2o, shifting his monarch again to dodge the incoming avalanche of coordinated threats. Wesley slams r-cheeks, preparing to double his pressure and transition into a crushing material harvest. Maxime captures with rxccs, sacrificing coordination in hopes of relieving mounting pressure through exchanges. Wesley recaptures ncxcchips, maintaining material edge, while centralizing a knight that now towers over Maxime's fractured army. Maxime plays Fawa, thrusting forward to disturb Wesley's knight and create fleeting hopes of counterplay. Wesley responds kf7, marching his king confidently into the center where it strengthens every offensive thread. Maxime pushes kf3, bringing his king closer to the action despite the swirling danger Wesley orchestrates. Wesley answers k6, stepping deeper into domination as his centralized monarch becomes a crushing endgame force. Maxime tries k3, hoping to oppose Wesley's king and resist the encroaching advance in a fading position. Wesley drives k6, forcing progressive gains as he tightens the noose around Maxime's vulnerable structure. Maxime attempts kd2, trying to avoid further concessions as Wesley's king penetrates the key central corridors. Wesley leans in with kc5, advancing relentlessly and putting Maxime's remaining pawns under lethal pressure. Maxime counters kd3, desperately maneuvering to block Wesley's expanding dominance across the board. Wesley strikes kb4, breaking through the queenside front while preparing to scoop up critical pawns. Maxime answers kd2, unable to halt Wesley's encroachment, but refusing to collapse without resistance. Wesley pushes kc4, invading deeply as his king becomes an unstoppable wrecking ball in the endgame. Maxime holds k3, attempting to re-establish defensive order despite Wesley's overwhelming central control. Wesley replies k5, circling his king methodically as he squeezes every inch of advantage from the position. Maxime pushes kd3, continuing the desperate dance to shield his scattered pawns from Wesley's encroaching forces. Wesley drops n8, rerouting the knight to strengthen domination and prepare decisive breakthroughs. Maxime reacts k3, trying to anticipate incoming threats even as Wesley's pieces tighten their grip ruthlessly. Wesley answers nfs7, a powerful regroup that sets up direct assaults on Maxime's destabilized defensive lines. Maxime plays kd3, striving to keep his king active while clinging to dwindling hopes of survival. Wesley replies n6, anchoring the knight centrally and marking total control over critical escape squares. Maxime shifts k3, but every step reveals fewer resources as Wesley's forces dominate the board completely. Wesley plays kc4, slicing forward with monstrous precision as Maxime's position finally begins to crack. Maxime pushes 5, a last act of defiance meant to open lines and seize one fleeting tactical chance. Wesley answers e8, calmly rerouting to snuff out counterplay while preparing to harvest Maxime's loose pawns. Maxime advances, fxg chinks, snatching material and desperately trying to unleash chaos before the noose tightens further. Wesley responds n7, recapturing with force while threatening checks and unstoppable infiltration. Maxime pushes e5, lunging forward in a final attempt to open pathways and distract Wesley's dominant king. Wesley plays kd5, striding into the heart of the position as threats begin to cascade from every direction. Maxime checks with che4, hoping to stall Wesley's march and wrest the tempo from the raging storm. Wesley answers kd4, shrugging off the check and continuing his inexorable advance toward victory. Maxime thrusts e6, pushing his passer with heroic defiance and fighting for one more spark of hope. Wesley meets it with kd5, calmly positioning his king to smother Maxime's ambitions once and for all. Maxime plays e7, a final desperate promotion attempt as he throws everything into one last tactical gamble. Wesley responds k6, stepping in front of the passer and extinguishing Maxime's final flicker of counterplay. Maxime tries k4, his king scrambling to join the fight despite the collapsing battlefield around him. Wesley strikes kx7, eliminating the dangerous pawn and securing a completely winning technical ending. Maxime plays k5, combating onward, though the position has slipped beyond salvation. Wesley replies k8, retreating to a perfect defensive post while preparing the clean conversion ahead. Maxime continues kd5, still resisting as he clings to the board, refusing to surrender lightly. Wesley seals victory with kd7, completing the domination as Maxime's position finally collapses into resignation. I'll end the video here. Please give me a like and subscribe to my channel. I'll keep finding the best and newest videos to share with you. Thank you so much, and I wish you all happiness and good health. Noose